Number 10. Tomb Builder, 2600 BC. Perk: you get to help build the pyramids. Downside: you might get sealed inside them. Welcome to the most f***ed-up jobs in history, some of which still exist. Tomb builders in ancient Egypt were responsible for constructing massive burial complexes for the pharaohs, a process that could take decades. First, they quarried limestone and granite using copper chisels and dolerite hammers. Once cut, each block, weighing 2 to 5 tons, was hauled to the construction site using wooden sleds dragged through desert heat, with teams of laborers pulling in sync, sometimes for several miles. Ramps made of mud brick, limestone chippings, and clay were built to haul the stones upward as the pyramid grew. They often stretched hundreds of feet and had to be constantly adjusted and reinforced. Inside the tombs, skilled artisans carved out chambers and passageways, decorated walls with religious texts and images, and sometimes installed booby traps to keep looters out. These rooms were lit with oil lamps or torches, filling the air with smoke in already suffocating spaces. Workers lived in crowded labor camps with poor sanitation. Their rations usually included bread, beer, dried fish, and onions. Medical care was basic. Broken bones were sometimes treated, but lung disease from dust and smoke was considered normal. In some cases, the most trusted tomb workers were sealed inside the burial chamber with the pharaoh, meant to serve as guardians in the afterlife. This wasn't just a job. It was a lifetime of labor, risk, and obedience, all for someone else's eternity. Number 9. Roman sewer cleaner, 100 BC. Ancient Rome was known for its engineering marvels, roads, aqueducts, bathhouses, and one of the earliest sewer systems in history. They called it the Great Drain, and it was a massive underground network designed to carry human waste into the river outside of the city. Roman sewer cleaners, often enslaved or from the lowest class, worked underground, removing sludge, debris, and anything that clogged the city's vast drainage system. They waded through waist-deep sewage, cleared blockages by hand, and kept waste flowing out of the city. Along the way, they'd encounter rotting food, dead animals, and sometimes even human corpses. The air was toxic, filled with methane and ammonia. A single open flame could cause an explosion. Breathing wasn't just unpleasant, it was dangerous. Rats, leeches, and biting insects were constant. So were sudden floods. If it rained, water could surge through the tunnels and sweep workers away without warning. It was filthy, deadly work, but without it, Rome would have drowned in its own waste. Sewer cleaners kept the city running, and the city pretended they didn't exist. Number 8. Plague corpse cart driver, 14th century Europe. When the Black Death swept across Europe, cities ran out of places to put the dead. In some towns, bodies lined the streets, left in doorways, piled in alleys, or slumped in carts no one had emptied. Corpse cart drivers were responsible for collecting them all and transporting them to mass graves outside the city. They moved door to door, searching for bodies, sometimes poking them with long wooden poles to make sure they weren't still alive. The corpses were swollen, leaking, and covered in black boils. Drivers lifted them by hand into wooden carts, wheeled them through silent streets, and dumped them into trenches by the dozens. The smell was unbearable, a mix of rotting flesh, infection, human waste, and smoke from funeral pyres. The carts attracted rats, flies, and fleas, turning the streets into open-air breeding grounds for disease. To cope, many cart drivers wore vinegar-soaked cloth over their faces. It didn't stop the plague. It barely stopped the gagging. Most drivers eventually got sick themselves. Whether from infected bodies, fleas, or the foul air they were breathing, it was usually just a matter of time. In the end, they often joined the very piles of bodies they spent their days collecting. Number 7. Executioner, 16th to 17th century Europe. Their job was simple enough: end someone's life, on command. Executioners carried out sentences handed down by the courts: beheadings, hangings, burnings, and worse. Some used swords or axes. Others used ropes, fire, or wheels designed to break bones one limb at a time. A clean kill wasn't guaranteed. Axes could bounce. Ropes could strangle slowly. Victims didn't always die on the first try. Crowds gathered to watch, not out of respect, but entertainment. The more painful the death, the louder the cheers. Between executions, executioners were often expected to torture prisoners, dispose of corpses, or clean up the scene. Many reported nightmares, depression, or a growing numbness to violence. Even if they didn't start as monsters, the job had a way of shaping them. Executioners were feared but not respected. They lived outside city walls, they were banned from churches, shunned in public, and buried in separate graveyards when they died. The role was usually passed down from father to son because no one else wanted it. It was steady work. It just meant spending your entire life surrounded by death and completely alone in it. Number 6. Sin Eater, 18th to 19th century rural Wales and England. Imagine being called into a stranger's home. A body lies on the table. The air is thick with grief. The family is silent. Tears on their faces. They place a piece of bread on the dead person's chest. You eat it, quietly, quickly, believing that in doing so you're taking on their sins. Every lie, every betrayal, every cruelty. That was the job of the Sin Eater. There were no prayers, no rituals, and no redemption. You just consumed the guilt of the dead and left. People believed it worked, but they also believed it cursed you. That with every sin you ate, you became darker, more evil. Sin Eaters were feared. They couldn't marry, couldn't go to church. Some were even buried outside consecrated ground like criminals. They were paid in scraps and could barely survive. But worse than the poverty was the isolation. Living among people who needed you but treated you like poison. Taking on someone else's sins might sound symbolic. But for them, it was a lifetime of being treated like they didn't have a soul of their own. Number 5. Chimney Sweep, 1700s to 1800s Britain. In the age of coal fires, clean chimneys meant fewer house fires. That meant someone had to climb inside and scrape out the soot. That someone was often a child, usually an orphan or a child sold into labor by a poor family. Boys as young as 6 were forced to climb inside narrow, pitch-black flues and scrape the walls clean with brushes or metal scrapers. Inside, it was suffocating. Soot clogged their lungs. Knees and elbows were torn raw. Some chimneys were so tight kids got stuck and never made it out. Kids were beaten if they refused to climb. They slept on bags of ash. And by their teens, many had developed a form of cancer from years of coal tar exposure. It's hard to imagine a job more brutal. These were just children, forced into dark, deadly spaces no adult would dare enter. If they were lucky, they lived to find another job. Most didn't. Number 4. Resurrectionist, 18th to 19th century Britain. Medical schools desperately needed human cadavers to train doctors, but at the time, the only legal sources were executed criminals, and there weren't enough to go around. That's where resurrectionists came in. These were grave robbers who dug up newly buried bodies and sold the corpses to universities and surgeons. It wasn't technically illegal, but it wasn't exactly legal either. So they worked fast, quietly, always at night. The job was physically brutal. Graves collapsed without warning. Coffins splintered. Resurrectionists risked being buried alongside the very corpses they came to steal. Once they got the body out of the grave, they stripped it down naked and left the clothes behind, because clothing was considered personal property and stealing it was a felony. Taking the corpse wasn't. Resurrectionists were hated. Families often booby-trapped graves with tripwires, stakes, and even explosives. Some even hired guards to defend their dead. If caught, resurrectionists risked public beatings, prison, or worse. Some were chased down by angry mobs and killed. A pair named Burke and Hare eventually skipped digging altogether. They murdered 16 people and sold the bodies to the highest bidder. Their crimes pushed Parliament to pass the Anatomy Act of 1832, finally legalizing body donations and ending the corpse trade. Until then, resurrection was a gruesome business, a high-stakes job that risked your freedom, your life, and your name. Also, doctors could learn what made humans tick. Number 3. Radium Girl, early 20th century United States. At the dawn of the 20th century, radium was considered a miracle element. It glowed in the dark, supposedly cured diseases, and was used in everything from toothpaste to face cream. But its most glamorous use was for glow-in-the-dark watch dials, hand-painted by young women in American factories. They were known as the Radium Girls, and they were hired to paint delicate numbers on military watches during World War I. But the paint was radioactive, and the brushes kept losing their shape. So managers told the girls to lip point them. In other words, press the bristles between their lips after each stroke. They were told it was harmless. Some even painted their nails and teeth with the glowing paint for fun. But radium is radioactive. Over time, it destroyed their bodies from the inside out. It started with toothaches and jaw pain, followed by bone damage, tooth loss, anemia, and aggressive cancers. As more girls got sick, the company denied everything. Doctors were paid off. Some women were told they had syphilis just to silence them. Despite the cover-up, the Radium Girls fought back. Their court cases became landmark moments in labor rights history, eventually forcing companies to adopt workplace safety laws. But for the women themselves, the price was irreversible. Their job wasn't just dangerous, it was lethal. Number 2. Call center employee. Present day, United States. Your job is simple on paper. Answer phones, help people, solve problems. But in reality, you're a human shield between frustrated customers and the company that failed them. Every day, you're screamed at by strangers for outages you didn't cause, policies you can't change, and problems you have no power to fix. This isn't just customer service. It's daily emotional abuse, and it's your job to take it with a smile. Everything is tracked. Your talk time, your bathroom time, your tone of voice. You're micromanaged by metrics and monitored by AI, all while trying to sound calm, warm, and human. You take 80 to 100 calls a day, from people who are angry, scared, grieving, or worse. You're expected to stay focused, efficient, and never take it personally. But over time, it dehumanizes you. To the company, you're just a number. To the customers, you're just a voice after they've been left on hold far too long. Burnout is high. Turnover is constant. Because you're not just solving problems. You're the emotional dumping ground of the modern world. Number 1, Red Shirt Security Officer. Stardate, to be determined. Location, space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of someone who won't be alive for the next episode. Meet the Red Shirt. A security officer assigned to protect the crew on alien planets, mysterious ships, and dark corridors where definitely nothing good ever happens. Your job? Beam down. Walk in front. Absorb the first laser blast. You don't ask questions. You just assume it's safe, and then you find out very quickly that it's not. Red shirts are the disposable heroes of deep space. Brave, or maybe just dumb enough to face danger, and unlucky enough to always stand too close to it. You're highly trained in combat, tactical response, and dramatic death scenes. You might even get a line or two. Just don't get attached. No one remembers your name, but they'll remember your scream as the alien spores dissolve your face. Sure, technically you're in Starfleet, but let's be honest, you're not making it past the teaser. Because being a red shirt isn't just a job, it's a countdown. Still alive? You beat the odds. Might as well subscribe. It's safer and more pleasant than any job on this list.